This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I are joined by our very good friend Brice Palm, who's back after many, many weeks of being away, but he is here to talk about the big UFC fight coming this weekend between Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic, which is going to be so much fun to watch, and it's going to be an interesting battle for the ages, but also we're going to be talking about the NFL, his Eagles. We're also going to be talking about college football. Where does he see the power ranking stand? Where does he see the Heisman race going? And so much more. All that and coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben, that's Josh, and yes, we have a guest. I think Josh and I were getting tired of each other. No, Brice is back with us. To be honest, we haven't had a guest on in what, like 4 months, more than 4 months, Josh.
Longer than
It's probably
4 months. I can't remember
6
who the
months
last one
probably.
was or when.
It's been a while, but we are glad that he is here. We're going to talk some UFC, which we haven't talked about in a while. We're going to talk about some football because football is just the best time of the year right now. As football's getting
Really heating
crazy.
up.
It's my
Uh,
favorite time of the year for football.
Browns suck, so we won't really have to go too far into there. And there's a chance that Emmanuel Clase wins the Cy Young, even though he choked in the playoffs. But that's besides the point. We're going to get to maybe some of that. I don't know. We'll see what happens today. But Josh, Brice, how are your weekends? How is the lovely weather over there in the United States?
Well, it's probably two different tales for Bryce and I, since he's down south and I'm up
Down south.
in Ohio, where today it's been like 48 degrees. This was a weekend that I worked, so that's how that pretty much went. Just sleep, going to the factory, sleep, work in the factory, sleep, work in the factory. Stay warm by the 430-degree asphalt.
Yeah, there you go. Brice,
Yeah, I think things have been pretty good for me this week. I've been living off what I called the trifecta. We had a political win.
that is true.
I had the
That is true.
Buckeyes win, and then the Eagles won against the Cowboys. So I mean, I don't know which one's better of those three. I could maybe pick one, but I'll be quiet about it.
You
But yeah, the
know,
weather is a lot different. The temperature is up about 10 more degrees than usual when the Gamecocks are winning, just because of all the excitement just radiates all this heat off of everybody, and they're ranked now. So
Yeah. Man, I was texting Bryce over the weekend. I No, it was 2 weekends ago, during the South Carolina Texas A&M fight, and he was watching the UFC card going on that night instead of the shellacking that the Gamecocks were giving the Aggies. But
yeah,
hey, that's why we got Bryce on, though, because we
that's
got
true.
a big time UFC fight card, at least a big main event that a lot of people have been looking forward to. A lot of planning and a lot of work has gone into making this fight happen. I think they actually even had to delay it, but
hmm
the Jon Jones Stipe Miocic fight is finally happening this Saturday. Heavyweight championship fight. Jon Jones, of course, considered by many the greatest fighter of all time, coming in at 27-1. And Stipe has had quite a long break from competition. For you guys that follow or are curious, Stipe's last fight came March of 2021, when he was knocked out by Francis Ngannou. So it's been a little while for him. And of course, John's last fight was just about a little over a year and a half ago, was when he took the belt from Cyril Gane and put him in submission. But here we are. We haven't had a big time heavyweight fight like this, I feel like, for a while now. So give us the scoop, Bryce. I think Jon Jones is going to be considered a heavy favorite by many, but I see the shirt that you got on, so I at least know who you're rooting for.
Well, I've always been a big Stipe fan. I've followed his career. I mean, he is currently the greatest heavyweight of all time and has proven so, I think, many time over. I wish he would have been able to get a rematch with Ngannou after that, but all the drama with Ngannou going elsewhere and Dana White
Right.
not being able to sign a deal. So that's unfortunate. But I mean, what's the next best thing, or actually probably even better than the Francis Ngannou fight for Stipe is fighting Jon Jones, who is not just the greatest light heavyweight of all time, but regarded as the greatest of all time, pound for pound. Um, so yeah, I'm really excited to see the matchup. They're both getting up there in age. They're older guys. Yeah, this fight has been delayed It's been on the calendar kind of a couple times. It was officially once. I believe it was last November now. So it's been a full
Yeah,
year that we've been waiting for this to finally materialize. Hopefully, in the next couple days, Jon Jones won't suffer another secret injury or something.
right. For real.
But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for it. The card overall is it's not super exciting overall, but it does have some bangers on it that we can talk about. The top three are gonna, or the last final three are gonna be phenomenal fights. But if you want to segue into one of those, or just go straight to Jon Jones and Stipe, we can make some predictions, break it down. Where do you want to go
Yeah,
with it?
I'd like to just continue and like flesh all that out. You did say they're old. They are. John is 37 and Stipe is 42, so I imagine stamina might come into play here at some point. But if Stipe were to win, Bryce, what kind of a fight would you see playing out?
Well, Stipe has always been an interesting heavyweight because he's always been kind of smaller than a lot of the other heavyweights. He's not like Derek Lewis with a big belly bouncing around out there and all that.
Right.
But he's been able to make the weight but stay in shape so great. And I mean, he looks like in the shape of his life at 42 for this fight. I mean, I would hope so after training for it for over a year now. Well, in theory, 2 years, but he's a
Yeah.
firefighter on the side, so he's always staying fit for that kind of in in regard to that kind of stuff. Um, but if Stipe were to somehow pull this off, which I think the chances are slim, it would just be because of his well-roundedness, his ability to stop the takedown, his boxing to keep the proper distance. I don't know how that's going to work out for him though with Jon Jones, insane, like almost 85-inch reach. Um, Really, the same way he beat DC in that trilogy, he just caught him and knocked him out real close in the clinch. So unless others somehow way he could, we've seen Jon Jones vulnerable in ways before against his like Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos, and in his last few light heavyweight fights, where they were just kind of decision fights where you could argue that even Reyes might have won the fight against Jones, just putting up numbers and all that. So Stipe can stay active. That cardio's still with him for all 5 rounds, and maybe he could get more significant strikes, more strikes. I don't know. The only realistic way is either him getting a knockout or just putting up the numbers, and Jones isn't active enough. Um, Yeah. What
Yeah.
if you want my final prediction though? I see Jon Jones winning. Unfortunately, I just don't think it's going to be as exciting as we all want it to be. I think it's going to look pretty similar to how he did against Cyril Gane submission. Although I think Stipe is going to hold his own for quite a bit longer. Give me around 2 or 3 submission.
Yeah. Yeah. Stipe is definitely on the lighter end. You think ESPN lists him here at 234 pounds. And then, yeah, Jon Jones before that, round one submission on Cyril Gane. His last three fights were all decisions, and one of them was split against Santos. So it's not like he's a huge knockout artist or like someone that usually comes in round one, but he is like the more active fighter, like has at least fought the most recent. Ben, what are you thinking?
Well, I know so much about UFC. No, I look, I remember when Jon Jones kind of hit the scene when I was younger, and I remember that was always the big thing. ESPN always had something about him, right? Like this was a freak, and he's been a freak. I mean, when you're still doing this at age 37, there's not many athletes in general that are doing it at that age. And then Stipe, it's like he's kind of like that, that uncle that you always like you kick out of the curb, but then he comes back later and is somehow still better shape and better at everything than you are, right? You have no idea why. And I feel like that's Stipe. Like he's just kind of like a guy that I think, a guy who I think us Ohioans have really, kind of bonded behind because, of that Cleveland connection. But also I think just generally like he's kind of like a working man's man. He just kind of gives, I think, that flavor and that idea. But it's really hard for me to believe that a 42-year-old guy who hasn't fought really in 3 years is going to be able to come out and become champ. Now we've seen crazier things happen. I'm thinking about boxing when there's been a few of those in the recent years that have really kind of just been like, whoa, that's crazy. Um, but for me, I think Jon might just edge it out enough. Again, it's just for me, the thing that sticks out is that when you haven't fought for 3 years, right? It's kind of like I always say, like with pitchers in baseball. How many pitchers do we see that misses like, 1 to 2 years? They come back and their first start is phenomenal. It's usually not. It's usually pretty rusty. And, unless he catches with a right, catches him with a hook here or there, I think Jon Jones is ready for this. And I think Stipe maybe this is the kind of the last curtain call for him. And if he wins it, awesome. But I don't see it in the long run for that to happen.
Yeah, I think he's retiring regardless, win or
Yeah,
lose, which I think will be a fun storyline. Is the reason I want Stipe to win so much is because if he wins, for Jon Jones, this is all about legacy. So if Stipe were to win, I feel like Jon Jones wouldn't retire because there's that risk with
yeah.
him retiring too. And if
Yes.
Stipe would win, the whole narrative would be, man, I got to get that back. I got to get that back. Come back, Stipe. Come back, Stipe. You know, but Stipe would just ride off in sunset, and say nope. But then what would Jon Jones have to do? He'd be forced to fight somebody like Aspinall, who's the rising heavyweight, who everyone keeps saying that Jon Jones is ducking right now, which in theory, it would be cool to see that fight because Jon Jones, if he were to fight Aspinall and win, you could say he's beaten like every top fighter in a different era. Like Aspinall is kind of the new, young, up and coming rising star. For Jon Jones
Mm.
to go and beat him, I think that would completely solidify him as the greatest of all time. So I'd love to see Stipe Jones, and I know Jones has even alluded to fighting Alex Pereira, who's also a rising legend. Well, I think he's already a cemented legend in just a short
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Or
He's already had the
year.
belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe Jon Jones could cut down, and he even said it was like a day or two ago. Jon Jones was talking on a talk show and basically said at this point he doesn't even care about Aspinall, but he'd be willing to fight Alex Pereira because for him it's about legacy, and that would be an awesome legacy fight. So I hope Stipe wins because I think it'll open up a bigger narrative and more fun stories that could come from it. But if not, I hope they both ride out in sunset, enjoy their lives.
For sure. Yeah, Stipe does have a win over Francis Ngannou earlier in his career. He's beaten Daniel Cormier. He's beaten Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem. So he's got a lot of good wins on his resume. And I think, like you said, if Jon loses this fight, maybe he would go ahead and cut down to that lightweight and go ahead and or light heavyweight and go with Pereira because there's really not many guys in heavyweight right now that would really like add on to like that narrative of the greatest of all time.
Hmm.
My final prediction, I'm going to go with a Jon Jones submission in round two.
Yeah, that's that's a good prediction, a safe prediction.
Safe one, yeah. I really don't think that it'll get done in one round like what happened with Gon, but I don't think it'll go further than 3 rounds at least. It's gonna have to be
Yeah,
either
Stipe is going to
Stipe
be
knocking him out
expecting
or
that.
yeah,
Cyril Gahn had no ground game whatsoever. Stipe
no,
does. He is a fairly good wrestler and to, just ground and pound artist. Yeah, Stipe's not going to just lay there and get choked out like that. Well, I
yeah.
do think he'll get choked out, but he's not going to go easy.
There you go. All right, Ben, do you have one? An exact one?
Uh, I'll say Jon Jones. I'm going to say by decision. That's what I'm going to say. I'm
Ooh.
going to throw it off
A
and say
decision
by
fight.
decision. Yes.
Split or unanimous?
I've I'd say unanimous because I think by the end, I think you're going to see Stipe maybe just slowly start fading away. I'm going to say unanimous. I'm going to say,
Okay.
Hmm.
but I do think that maybe that conditioning we talked about might give Stipe that little bit of advantage to kind of just stay with it the whole time. And again, his body hasn't been beat up over fights over the last 3 years, so he's got a little bit more, I think, to give than most.
Hmm.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, the other two big fights on this card, we'll go to the next one, the co-main, which is Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira, two staples in the lightweight division. Although they haven't gotten many wins lately, either of them. Michael Chandler's just won one of his last 4 fights. That came with that, I think, crazy kick that he got on Tony Ferguson. And
Mm.
then on the other end, Charles Oliveira is one out of his last 3. He, of course, beat Dariush, but had a really long winning streak, initially get snapped just a couple years ago by Islam, who was a rising uh, fighter in that weight class too. And then Arman got him in a split decision in his last fight back in April. So these two guys definitely household names in the sport and should be a pretty fun fight to watch too. What else can you tell us about this matchup,
Yeah.
Brice?
Yeah, both these guys, every single one of their fights are incredible in regards to all elements of MMA. If you're going to watch a Michael Chandler fight or a Charles Oliveira fight, you know you're going to get great grappling, great jiu-jitsu, wrestling, striking. You're going to get blood. You're going to see
Yeah,
all that, all the exciting stuff that you want to see. And these guys have actually fought each other before. I'm not sure if you mentioned that or not, but Oliveira did win, but it was
yeah,
back and forth. Chandler
21.
actually, yeah, Chandler pretty much knocked him out, but Oliveira during that streak had this uncanny ability to just not go unconscious and to keep staying up. I mean, Dustin Poirier was able to knock him down. A couple other guys were able to really hurt him, but he just kept coming. And even the hit Oliveira's one of his more recent losses against Arman, Oliveira was, I think, winning, and that fight ended with him choking on Arman, and he thought Arman was out. So if you were to go back and watch it, he's actually celebrating because he won, but Arman didn't actually get out.
Huh.
So that made Charles Oliveira kind of just be a little more confident in just holding that position and not changing it. So he kind of cost himself the loss. I still think Oliveira is that same fighter that he was during that streak when, I mean, obviously he lost the title to Islam, but I think he was just a little cocky, needed to be humbled. I think he's probably going to reboot that streak again against Chandler and go on to get an eventual rematch that was scheduled at one point but never materialized. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. I mean, Chandler is a freak of nature. I don't know. I'm not encouraging you guys to go on his Instagram and look at his muscles, but if you did, my goodness, the dude is
No,
a
you're not wrong.
yeah.
He's definitely a workout warrior. Like you said, all his fights are super entertaining. They mostly all end in knockout one way or another. He ain't afraid to come out and take like big shots, and obviously sometimes that costs him too on the other end. But
Mhm.
definitely, I love watching all his fights, regardless if they're wins or losses. Like just a personal favorite of mine, watching fight.
Yeah, I see it going very similar to the first time they fought. Although I think Chandler's even in better shape than he was before. Now that he's experienced it, he knows what to watch out for. I mean, he's not the kind of fighter who, when he gets stuck in a position on the ground, he's just going to sit there and wait for 1 second to slip out. He's doing what every coach dreams their fighter would do. He's continuously fighting into the next position to get out. Of being like stuck in a position that you just can't against the cage or in the middle of the mat. He's going to get out of what Charles, I think, tries to pin him in. Um, I just don't know how that fight goes. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I'm going to say split decision for Charles Oliveira, and it's kind of a title eliminator for either one. But for Chandler, I don't think he so much would care if he loses because I think that money fight with Conor McGregor is still out there, and I think it's going
Yeah,
to come to fruition at some point. I think he was even on a talk show earlier today or last night saying he knows he's still going to fight McGregor. So we'll see.
that was going to be like my last question before we made a pick on this fight. Is that fight with McGregor and Chandler still being talked about? I know it was like discussed because they were like both coaches on The Ultimate Fighter or something like that, and usually it ends with both of them fighting.
I think it's still going to happen. Even McGregor has hinted at it before that he's still kind of humbly, when he's not playing his character, admits that he's Chandler still deserves that fight. And at this point, McGregor has tarnished his legacy kind of quite a bit with the injuries and backing out. I think the only thing that could get people really excited for Conor McGregor to come back again, he's really limited to the narrative choices, and I think Chandler is the only one at this point that has any real hype behind it. So that's the fight that makes the most sense for him. So win or lose, I think Chandler's next fight will be Conor McGregor.
Yeah. And definitely, obviously, would be way cooler and more hyped up if he is able to beat Oliveira in this fight, which I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure is going to happen. I'm leaning towards like an Charles Oliveira, maybe TKO or KO.
Yeah, all I can say is may the best man win. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be happy with either one. Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Ben,
Oh
before we move
yes,
on
many
to
many
this third
thoughts.
fight?
Uh, I am going to say a second round, 38 seconds in, TKO Oliveira. Precise.
All
If
right.
I get that right, I
Mhm.
need to go to do the lottery. If I get
Yeah,
that
I would
correct.
say so. I don't think that's going to happen, but yeah.
The
You
sports
never
books need to
know.
hire you.
Dude, if that happens, I need Donald Trump to hire me into the White House. I'll be his ambassador to Hungary. That's what I'll do.
Then the DraftKings sponsorship will be coming in. Then we can do this full time.
Yeah, 100%. And then I'll have a private jet and I can fly to you and we can do it midair if you want to.
We could. All right. The third big fight on this card that I think will be interesting is Bo Nickel and Paul Craig. Bo Nickel's been like a rising star in this middleweight class.
Why does it sound like two uncles that are about to go fight?
Paul
Like
Craig is definitely an uncle name.
like
Bo Nickel could go either
he's
way,
like the
I
cousin that you
What's
think.
don't
with your
like.
affinity for uncles today? Did you have an uncle
I
that hurt
you know
you
what?
recently?
I have no idea. I'm just, dude, when you're with kids for like 9 hours, your brain just goes kapooey. That's usually what happens.
Kapui.
Kapooey.
So anyway, Bo Nickel's becoming like a really rising star in this league. He's 6-0 now. Obviously has the big time wrestling background at the college level at Penn State and hasn't lost yet, at least at this level. And he's a very heavy favorite at minus 1,300 odds. Paul Craig used to be a pretty solid name in this class, at least. The 17-8-1 record is nice, but he's only won one out of his last five fights too. I'm still waiting for Bo to get like that one big time name, or maybe eventually he'll get a shot at the title if he proves himself more against some other guys in this class. But yeah, Brice, what's been your thoughts about Bo Nickel's rise in this league so far?
Yeah, so I mean, I think even ESPN just posted a little bit ago on this, which is all interesting stuff if you don't know about Bo Nickel and you want to know, but he has a 120-3 collegiate record in wrestling in college as a junior and senior, three national championships. He was the Dan Hodge Trophy winner in 2019. And he's just has various other awards for being pinner of the year and all that. So he's just a very accomplished person. When you're that accomplished in your trade, I mean, you might as well try it out in the UFC, which the idea is to originally was to pin different styles against other styles,
Hmm.
and to see his ability of wrestling against other strikers and things like that is always fun to watch. But so Paul Craig is a fantastic jujitsu guy. He is unfortunately his career just has not really materialized. I think the way he and a lot of other fans thought it would. He had a couple big wins early on, and then he kind of peaked right there. And a lot of his fights, he tends to just. There's a thing that in jujitsu now where guys will just fall to their back right away and wait for someone to fall on top of them, put them in a position. You just can't really get away with that in the UFC, at least not against high level
Yeah.
competition. And if he wants to go ahead and try that against Bo Nickel, I mean, go for it. Because as much as I love jiu-jitsu and being someone who's done it a little, wrestlers are still better and wrestlers are going to win every time. The way they know how to distribute their weight and use their strength to their advantage and just escape submissions and things like that. It's it's just unbeatable. And if you look at how many the record number, I think for what style has been the champion the most in the UFC, it's wrestling by a pretty high amount. So wrestlers are
Interesting.
almost guaranteed, and grapplers are almost guaranteed success. I think Bo Nickel is guaranteed success in this fight, but he is young. He can make a stupid mistake. Paul Craig is a veteran. Um, Bo Nickel's striking has it's definitely juvenile by top 10 standards. But he does have strength. But he hasn't necessarily had to rely on that yet. So, and I don't really think he will in this fight either, although this will be his biggest test for sure. I do expect him to win. It's going to be a grappling match. I think probably pretty early on after they just both get bored with trying to strike each other. They're gonna want to grapple because that's what grapplers do. Although there has been times in the past where we've seen fights that are advertised as grappler versus grappler, jiu-jitsu versus wrestler, and they always end up being striking matches because like for some reason they don't ever want to take each other down.
Yeah.
But I think these guys will. I think they will. Bo Nickel's not going to be afraid to fall on top of Craig if he falls to his back. But it should be an exciting fight. I'm excited to watch Bo Nichols rise. I think he's going to continue rising. I think if he wins this, that'll get him a fight in the top 15. I can't remember. Is Paul Craig ranked right now? He was. I'm not sure if he is anymore. But
I don't have the standings in front of me right now. No, I'm not
yeah, I
sure.
unfortunately don't either. But Paul Craig has been ranked. He's been gradually falling off the rankings. So if he is, he's going to be in like the 14, 15 range. But this will definitely set Bo Nickel up for a fight that's probably top 15, top 10, maybe even.
Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting.
Who's got that middleweight belt right now?
Uh Dricus Du Plessis has it right now.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah. I couldn't remember if it
yeah,
was him or if Adesanya still had it, but
no, yeah, he pretty much handled Adesanya pretty easily. Adesanya's overrated, always has been. But I'm really hoping to see Strickland get that rematch against Duplessis because I believe that Strickland was robbed in that fight. But we'll see.
yeah. Yeah, who knows? Maybe a couple more fights we'll get to see Bo against one of these guys.
I'm going to bring up the rankings real quick here. Let's look at middleweight.
All right, yeah, let's
So
do
it
that.
doesn't look like Paul Craig is in the rankings anymore for middleweight. I know he was toying with light heavyweight or middle welterweight for a while, but he is currently not. But yeah, there's Hamzat too in middleweight. Hamzat Bo Nickel match would be awesome to see. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's a lot of exciting things happening in middleweight. I'd love
Yeah,
to see Nickel in the picture.
me too. Um, let's see. So you had two other prelim fights I think you want to highlight. The rest of the main card for anyone curious is let's see, we got I'm gonna butcher these names. Viviane Araújo versus Corrine Silva in women's flyweight, and then James Lontop versus Mauricio Ruffy in men's lightweight.
Yeah, we won't get into those. Just
Well,
the
thank you.
upcoming guys.
Uh,
But I do have two prelim fights I would like to just briefly highlight. So I'll
yeah.
start with Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. Chris Weidman is special to me. He was the first UFC fighter that I ever fell in love with, or basically watched first when I started to watch UFC. I remember just going to Buffalo Wild Wings and watching Chris Weidman versus Anderson Silva, and my buddies telling me all about UFC, and it's like, okay, this is pretty cool. My dad was a martial arts growing up, so I always had an appreciation for it, and I did wrestling throughout um, primary school and all that. And I knew Chris Weidman was a wrestler, similar accolades, not quite as impressive as Bo Nickel, but he's got quite the resume. But Chris Weidman is a former middleweight champion. This is kind of this fight. If he loses, I think he's retiring. Ever since he broke his leg at UFC 261, in the same way that Anderson Silva broke his leg on him, he kind of hasn't been the same. But this fight is a really balanced matchup. I'm excited to see it because if he wins, I think he's just going to keep climbing. If he loses, he's done. But Chris Weidman's fight to watch. It's always entertaining. He gives us all. He's got that American spirit. He's always got the American flag with him. The "Won't Back Down" song playing in the background. So good. If you love America, it's a good fight to watch. There's a lot to love about America right now.
Well, I love America.
True.
And then yeah, Eric Anders is his opponent who, I don't really have much to say about him. I think Weidman has a slight advantage over him. The other fight that I want to mention is strictly for one purpose. It's Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson. I just wanted to bring up Jim
Mm.
Miller because I wanted to give hope to some of the old guys out there like Stipe. Jim
Hmm.
Miller is 41. He's one of the
Yeah.
top five oldest fighters in UFC. He fought at UFC 100, UFC 200, and UFC 300.
That's
Um,
wild.
yeah, he got eradicated by Bobby Green at UFC 300, but he was like resilient and lasted almost the entire fight. It was a bloodbath. It was entertaining. You're going to get the same thing with Jim Miller every time, even though he's in his 40s. But yeah, he has what I wrote down some little stats about him here. He most UFC wins with 26. He's got that's how long he's been in the game, and he's got the most UFC fights with this will be his 45th fight, I believe, in the UFC. Lots of times when you see those fighters come out, you'll see their records. Not all those fights are UFC fights. They're usually just their professional MMA records, but added to their UFC records. So when you see that number that's going to be higher than like 44 or 45, or I'm sorry, his victories at 26, it's going to be counting all those other wins from his other ones too. But just in the UFC alone, 26 of those wins are fighting in the UFC. So, hey, and he's still winning in his 40s. So
Yeah.
Stipe could win in his 40s, right? Even though he's fighting the
Yeah.
greatest.
A
True.
little bit different competition there, but
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, I just wanted to put those two out there. I mean, Chris Weidman, I'm really upset that he's on the prelims. Should be a main card, but maybe I'm biased. As a former champion on a prelim, that's it's kind of sad.
it's true. Yeah,
But yeah,
you'd
that's
think.
kind of a wrap for what I have on this card. I mean, it's in New York. It's the last real big one for the year. The December cards, unfortunately, the title fight didn't fall through, so that one's still materializing. But yeah, UFC's looking out to go with a bang at the end of the year here with this Jon Jones Stipe fight. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I didn't have anything else to add to the fight card either. I guess we can talk about some of the other gear that you're wearing, the Eagles hat there. Uh, they've been on a nice streak. Started off Started off 2-2, had those losses to the Falcons and the Bucks early, but I think they've won their last five now and got a pretty exciting Thursday night match with Washington, who's been one of the more pleasant surprises in the league too, with rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. But I think the whole thing with Philly, Bryce, was that you had the Super Bowl season where you made it, then you had like the epic collapse the year after that, and then you start off 2-2, and you're probably asking a bunch of questions like, is it time to bust this open? Is it time for us to get a new coach? But maybe some of those discussions have died down now at your first place in the NFC East. What's been the roller coaster of emotions, if any, over there in
Mhm.
Philly?
Yeah, I think the most obvious one was Nick Sirianni and the coaching. I mean, there was even one point in a couple games ago, but right before we started going on the streak, where the fans are booing at Sirianni, and I've always tried to give the guy grace, but he was starting to kind of tick me off too. Just some of the play calls and constantly going for it on fourth down. The game against the Jags the other week shouldn't even have been that close because he just kept going for it on fourth down over. If we just kicked the field goals, we never would have been in a position to where the Jags could have won on a final drive. It was ridiculous. But things have looked extremely optimistic the past few games. I think we'll really see what this team is made of this Thursday on this short notice, how we can handle the threat for which is a new thing to say about the Commanders.
Yeah,
um, I think a lot of people knew that what Jaden Daniels was capable of. At least I did. I predicted this as a very good possibility. So I'm excited to see the Commanders doing well, even though they're rivals. It's always fun to have your division's team, other opponents be competitive and such. But yeah, I mean, the Falcons' loss was let's come on. I don't know if you guys were watching that. That was BS.
did not.
The
But
Kirk Cousins miracle. The Tampa one was a given because AJ Brown and Devontae Smith were both out. So take those away. I think Eagles and Lions, the two. I don't think. I mean, maybe the Vikings. Eagles and Lions are the two best teams in the NFC, hands down.
yeah, you said this could be a real test for Philly. I think it's also equally a test for Washington because they got the 7-3 record, but they lost to the three best teams they've played this year: the Bucks, the Steelers, and who else was it that got them?
They just lost Sunday, right?
Steelers.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Steelers got them. And then their other losses, oh, Baltimore. I skipped the Baltimore one. Baltimore and Bucks. So the three best teams they play, they haven't beaten. So I mean, it's kind of
Hey,
expected when you got a young quarterback. You're gonna have like games where you make mistakes, and it's gonna be hard to like, I guess, get those signature wins. But they have another opportunity nonetheless with the Philly matchup, and like you said, Philly with the short week coming up. I guess just as an Eagles fan, what scares you about Washington? You mentioned Jaden, and you thought he'd be playing pretty good, and I agree. The running ability definitely helps him. They've been able to protect him better than what I thought they'd be able to as well.
honestly, nothing scares me about Washington. It's more the Eagles against Washington scare me just because it's extremely short notice. We're still working on getting that offensive line healthy again. Jordan Mailata just came off IR. I don't know if he's going to play this week, but I know he can start practicing again. Um, Washington, despite some of their defensive struggles, I think has a pretty, or at least they invested in a pretty skilled defensive line. And Hurts has been having to run around a lot more than I would want him to, but he's been proving that he can run again. After suffering some injuries the past year that kind of stipend that. But I'm not too. I'm just worried about the short notice and all the hype of it all. But it's at home. It's in Philly. Um, yeah, nothing scares me other than the electricity that Jaden Daniels can whip out.
We'll let you weigh in here, Ben. It should be a definitely a fun matchup, and one that we don't get a ton of, it
Hmm.
seems like on Thursdays, but this is
You're
one
right.
that would get me excited at least.
Yeah, I mean, I look, I think the NFL in a way is a little bit like college football right now, where there is a little bit more parity. I think, like even the Chiefs, I don't think are as good as what their record is. I think they're very much
Oh yeah,
a,
they're
a s-
losing to the Bills this week.
a 7-3 team, 6-3 team or whatever. But I think when you look at these two teams, you have the Commanders who have a young quarterback, and look, we know this in the NFL that look, these teams go on runs, right, in the NFL, and we've seen, we even look at the Cam Newtons and the times when these teams go on runs, and then they do hit some at times some rough points, and I think with the Commanders, I realized they need to keep their receivers healthy and they need to stay healthy overall, and I think that's their biggest challenge. Then you look at the Eagles, and it's look they got a gift this year when the Giants didn't re-sign Saquon Barkley, right? Like that was a gift, and I think you add him to that explosive offense again, and I think Brice hit it on the point is when the Eagles are healthy, they're good, but that's the problem is that they seem to always have injury problems at some point,
Yeah,
and it's very similar to kind of the Browns are, where when the Browns are good, there's you can't see the struggle with the coaching and stuff because they have all their players that are healthy, and I think that's the same with the Eagles. Like if they stay healthy, and then they could put a run together. And again, at the end of this day, I think just the way that the Eagles have been playing and vice versa, way that the Commanders have not been playing, I think I'm going to take the Eagles in this one because I think they have what it takes. I think to pull this out.
Yeah, Eagles
it's the best news
second
ever.
in the league in rush yards per game. I think they're like fifth in rush yards per attempt. It's definitely their bread and butter, and Saquon's a big part of that. And yeah, until I guess I see Washington beat one of these teams above 500, I'm gonna pick against them in those kind of games. But yeah, I'm going with Philly in this one as well.
Wow, I love it.
A unanimous Philly pick. Why don't we talk about our team, Bryce, up here in Ohio, which is the Cleveland Browns. They had a bye this past week, so they didn't have to worry
Oh, we
about
won.
losing. But I know you're at least from Ohio. I'm curious maybe what people down south make of our quarterback situation that we've put ourselves in.
People down south only think about the Gamecocks and Clemson quarterback situations.
That's
NFL down
not
here, it's very you don't hear a lot of it. If you go and sit down at the cigar shop or you're walking by at the someone at the grocery store, you don't hear about. I don't know if they would know what a brown is, but
nobody does.
No, we don't even know what a
yeah.
brown is, to be honest with you. I poop it in the morning. That's all I know.
Yeah, I was hoping when you said the Ohio team that we both like was going to be Ohio State because there's actually a little more there worth talking about. But
Yes,
That's
I
you and
agree
Ben,
as
I'll,
not
well.
me. We'll talk.
Remember, he likes to avoid the topic that he roots for a terrible college football
Oh
team.
yeah, I forgot. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. See, it's very forgettable. It's very
what's that? That
forgettable.
Florida team? Is that
Yeah,
where?
it's one of
We
the ones that sucked this year. I think it was
we
The
just
ones
had
that
the
Clemson.
three
one
most
of those teams
exciting
that went
quarters
0
of
and
play.
11 last week in all Florida sports.
Yeah. No, they
0 and
did get a
11 in
win. The
Florida for
Dolphins
football.
won,
Yeah,
so they
Oh, they did.
technically
You're
did get a
right.
win.
Yeah.
yeah, that's absolutely wild though. But that doesn't surprise me that South Carolina folk just want to know about Lenore Sellers and Cade Klubnik. But Deshaun Watson is a Clemson product, so
True,
there's a
true.
little bit of a local connection there. Either way, though, Cleveland returns to the field this week against New Orleans down in
Loss.
Louisiana. You think it's a loss?
Josh, the last like four times I picked the Browns to win, they've choked for me more than I could count. And so I don't know what they're doing with quarterback, man. I don't know what this offense is doing. Dude, it's so chaotic. Like we thought it was fixed, and then it's now not. The defense is going to
Ben,
give
I
you.
have a logical explanation.
Oh
We had
boy,
a backup quarterback against the NFL's number one defense against the Chargers, and Jameis Winston was inevitably going to have a multi-pick game. But the good news is the Saints started off 2-0 and are 1-7 since. And that means that Jameis is going to be due for another big performance.
and it's his old team, so maybe maybe he gets that revenge. You know what? Screw it. Screw it. I will
I
go with
convinced you. I flipped Ben.
oh geez, he's gonna live on that one for a while. I'm gonna go. Yeah, I guess I'll pick the Browns. I mean, dude, it's just gonna be a terrible game to watch. Just honestly, this is gonna be an awful game to watch. Just no one wants to watch this game, and
It's not going to be fun. Yeah,
it's
their
gonna be like
last game
16
they
to 13. That's what I want to say.
yeah, their last game they lost seven straight, and then last week were able to beat Atlanta 20-17. But
Still
yeah,
gross.
yeah, still gross. The Saints defense ain't anything like the Charger defense, and like I said, I think that Jameis, you got to take the good with the bad. We had a bad one the last time against the Chargers, which I totally expected, but I think that we can have a good one. I think the Saints are manageable, and the Saints are 1.5 point favorite right now, but I'll go ahead and take us. I feel confident in Cleveland Browns W. After that, though, we got Steelers, Broncos, Steelers, Chiefs, Bengals, Dolphins, Ravens to end the season. So there's not going to be too many
Easy route for
more.
the Browns. Easy route for the Browns. Hey, let's just at this point, let's just get that number one pick. All right, let's just go for it.
Let's get the number one pick. Bring Shador and Dion to
No,
Cleveland.
stop it, Josh. We've talked about this, Josh. We're
Bad
not.
Josh.
It's
No,
not
we
happening.
don't want Shador
We're
Sanders.
not doing that,
Giants are going to
Josh.
get the number one pick. They're going to want to get a quarterback for neighbors.
They will, but they can take Carson back.
Oh, gross. Oh,
He might get taken in the eighth round if he's lucky at this point.
Yeah, you ain't lying
some
about
might
that.
say that he has been becking around.
Yeah. Uh, speaking of
Yeah,
Carson
Josh liked
Beck,
that one. Josh liked that one.
Ole Miss beat Georgia 28-10 this past weekend. Beck had only 186 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick.
We totally called that Josh.
I didn't.
I didn't either. That's what I'm saying.
I was like, I picked Georgia in spite. I was like, Carson Beck's gonna have a game like this, but the Ole Miss offense, I mean,
It's
they
just
had that one
trash.
that one-off game I thought against Arkansas where Dart threw six touchdowns, and Dart wasn't even all that spectacular in this
No.
game either. He didn't even reach 200 yards, only had one touchdown and a pick himself. But kudos to Ole Miss.
Can we
They've
finally agree that Carson Beck is just trash? Can we finally agree that this guy is not a good quarterback at all?
He's not. I don't even know like right now who's still saying he is. I
They
I don't hear
compared
really
him to
anybody.
Baker Mayfield and some of these other guys. I'm like, can we not? Like, no, like he's not.
Yeah,
It's just
not
it's a
me.
fact.
Yeah. I ain't I'm out on Carson Beck. I thought that last year was definitely some promise. He got better as the year went on, and the fact that he came back this year, I thought was going to make Georgia, a real threat once again. But they're winning
Their offense
games
is atrocious. Their
in
offense is
spite of him.
bad.
Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah, it's
offense is not good, and the defense is not like number one ranked power
No,
power
it's not.
defense that Georgia's been playing with either. It's still good. It's just not one that you can totally rely on to win all of your games for you anymore. What else happened this past weekend in college football? Michigan and Indiana. That was a game we talked about. We weren't really gonna we didn't think that Indiana would lose, but we thought their offense would be tested against
which they
the
were.
best defense and the best team, honestly, they've played. That's how their schedule's been.
And
Yeah.
But
it showed they are definitely a beatable team for sure.
Mhm.
yeah,
Like it's
20 to
they're not.
15 the final
Yeah.
here. Their defense let Davis Warren and Michigan get 137 pass yards, which
Imagine
might
what
say
Ohio State
something a
will
little
do.
bit about that too. But yeah, on the other end, Curtis Rourke had 206 yards, two touchdowns, and a pick for IU. I think Michigan too might have been getting up for this one. I mean, how cool would it be when you're probably gonna, I mean, they're scratching for bowl eligibility right now at
They
five
might
and
not get it,
five.
to be honest with you.
They might not, but how cool would it be if they could have taken down IU for their first loss this season and also clinched that sixth win for them to be bowl eligible? I
Hmm.
think Michigan had a lot to play for in this one. That might also be why the score is as close as it was. I thought Indiana might score 30 tops in this one, so like in the 20s is like about what you could have expected.
Yeah. I mean, Indiana, look, I still think they're a good team, but I think we need to start pumping the brakes on this whole like they're going to run the Big Ten because I don't see them beating Oregon head to head. No way. And I don't see them beating Ohio State in 2 weeks. I think Ohio State, I think Ohio State, if they play like the way they did against Purdue and the way they did against, especially the defense, the way it's played, where it hasn't given up a touchdown in the last 2 games, an offensive touchdown. To me, I don't see how Indiana could beat Oregon. I don't see how they could beat Ohio State. And again, I think Indiana, nothing against Indiana, but also when you're that close to Michigan, which we all know Michigan's offense is atrocious, and we know their defense is not nearly as good as it's been. Um, that just shows me a little bit of a lack of um, skill that is needed in order to keep going through.
Yeah. Indiana hit aside though. I mean, Big Ten though. Come on, man. Big Ten.
But listen,
They're representing in the AP
it's the
poll right
first
now.
time.
I'm loving it
It's
because
the
I'm stuck
first.
down here in
It's the
SEC
first time
country.
Big Ten. It's the first time Big Ten's ever had four teams in the top five of the AP poll.
Mhm.
Then it's a major drop off after those top four,
Yes,
unfortunately.
agreed.
I was talking to a friend today about whether or not the Big Ten or the SEC is the better conference this year, and I was like, I can give you nine teams out of the SEC that like people would at least be scared to play or nervous about playing, or that could even still make the 12-team playoff right now. And in the Big Ten, you got like the four that are up there, and then it's just like it bottoms out big time, like
That is
huge gap.
true.
But yeah, the fact that Indiana can be 10-0 right now, and I mean, I think that just says a lot about the Big Ten Conference as a whole.
You know what, Josh?
John, on a little side note, sorry, Ben, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go
Okay.
ahead.
Oh,
No,
I
go
was going to
ahead.
bring up, I mean, are we looking at the potential of an Ohio State Oregon rematch in the Big Ten?
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think that's like what
Absolutely.
everybody's pretty set on. Obviously, IU could change that if they beat Ohio State in that game, or if, Oregon could have a slip up here at some point too. But I think
I
that's
want that. I want, as an Ohio State fan, I want that so bad. Immediately after that loss by 1 point, when he slid down, I was like, I can tell you for a fact we're rematching them in the Big Ten championship, and we're
oh
winning.
yeah, when it gets decided by 1 point at Autzen, like you could very well make the argument that if that game was at the shoe, that OSU was walking out with a 1 or 2 point win too. Like
Agreed.
the home environment over at Oregon is really good. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was both teams' first big test this season, really, too.
And the cool thing is, I mean, whoever wins that's going to get that bye week in
Right.
the
Yeah.
playoff.
It's like
100%.
RJ. It's like RJ Young said though. Sometimes people might want that 5 seed because then you get to play the worst team in the
True.
playoff, and you get to play the worst champion in the playoff the
Yeah.
next game. So technically, you have an easier route to where you need to be. But again, that's nitpicking.
Yeah.
Picking.
Let's see. Another game that I was hyped about, but ended up being a complete dud was Alabama at LSU. Picked LSU in this one. I thought both teams, this was really a playoff elimination game. Honestly, you could look at it, it'd be the third loss for whoever lost it. They say LSU at home at night is the maybe the hardest environment to play in all college football, and they lose this one by 29 points. Just Bama comes in and just pulls their pants down. Jalen Milroe has a Heisman worthy performance just like he did last year with the four rushing touchdowns and did not see this coming. I'll just say that.
I did. I picked Bama.
By this margin though?
No, not by
in
that
this
much.
fashion.
I mean,
No.
look, I'll say this: Jalen Milroe still is not. That dude just so inconsistent. Like, yeah, he
It
has a
makes
great
me mad,
game.
dude. It makes me mad. Jalen Milroe could play like this every week. He should be able to.
And people are like, well, look at the way he runs the ball. I'm like, if you have to run your quarterback that much, what does it say about your offense? Is
Mm.
just my question.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got going on here. Trying to remember what other game. Oh, yeah, the other game I think we talked about was Colorado and Texas Tech. So Colorado won this one. They're now 7-2. And if they do win out, they have to win out. They can get to the Big 12 championship. That could be, assuming they win that game, the 4 seed that 5 seed could play after they beat like Boise State or whoever will be the 12 seed.
Oh, lovely. I would love that.
Yeah, Shador and Travis had a nice one. Travis adding to the Heisman campaign, 99 yards and a touchdown. Shador, 291 yards to the air, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Um, see the ACC is getting interesting right now too. Like Miami suffered their first loss, obviously, to Georgia Tech. Miami, I
Mm.
think, was due for a loss. They just kept getting close. They'd get close, they'd squeak out, and then finally Georgia Tech is the team that finally gets them down. But as far as like the conference standings go right now, um, SMU and Clemson are first and second now. Miami's
Which is
third.
wild.
Yeah, it is wild. Miami ends the season. Let me see who their last 2 games are. They end this season with Wake Forest and Syracuse. Clemson ends the season with Pitt this weekend, the Citadel, and South Carolina. Maybe them Gamecocks will have something to say about this. Well, that won't contribute at all to conference standings at least.
No.
And then SMU ends the season with Boston College, Virginia, and Cal. So they at least seem like they got the easier path on paper, but still that ACC window's looking interesting too. Also, Pitt just lost their second game this weekend
Yep.
too after starting undefeated. So yeah, they're pretty much out of the picture now as far as the conference standings go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you said it how it is there, Josh. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, New playoff poll comes out tonight too. We'll see how much it varies from the AP, but at least right now as we speak, the AP's top 10 are Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana, Tennessee, BYU, Notre Dame, Alabama, Ole Miss. So that's where we can go ahead and talk our power rankings at least. I don't know what the committee's going to think, but I know what I think for my
Ours is
top
always
five.
right. Ours is always right.
There hasn't
I
been a lot
will
of change lately,
I will
but we'll
read
see.
it from last week. We had, let's see here. If I can find it. Yep. So power rankings: Oregon 1. Oh, this is mine. Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Miami 4, Texas 5. Josh's was Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Texas 4, Penn State 5. Um, I'll give mine first. I'll go one to five. For me, number one, it's clear as day for me, and that's Oregon right now. Um, when you're undefeated and you've beaten the number, two team in many people's eyes. Um, that says a lot, and so I'm going to keep them at one. The way Ohio State dismantled Purdue, there's been a lot of teams have been messing around with some of these, you know, some of these different teams that are supposed to beat pretty easily, and Ohio State put a shutout out there with a lot of their second teamers in the second half, and just shows you how good Ohio State is when they want to be good. And then number three, I was going to no, I'm kidding. They lost. So for me, I'm going to put Texas at three. I thought they looked really well this past week. I think they're a top team, um, top three team for sure in this country. Um, Man, 4 and 5 were
These
pretty
are the
pretty
tough
dang
ones.
hard. Um, and for me, it could go a lot of ways. For me, four is one where it's hard for me to really think about like who deserves it, who goes there. But for me, I'm going to give the credit to Indiana. I want to put four Indiana again. Again, we've talked about.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Well, you were just hating on them
I
The
earlier.
fourth
was.
best team in
I
the
was
country is Indiana Hoosiers, Ben Babin
because
says.
this is why. Pick me a team right now that has I even like I look at BYU. I think Indiana could be BYU. I think they could. That maybe it's just because of competition. I'm not sure. To me, it's just hard to find another team that's like, man, they're better. I think, to be honest, I think as RJ Young says, I think Penn State and Indiana are pretty much the same team, and many people have Penn State in the top five. So
I
for
mean,
me,
honestly, if you look at all Penn State's wins, like their best wins are
exactly,
Illinois and Wisconsin and USC, which
exactly,
I hate that for them, but they played Ohio State so good that it's like I know they're a good football team. It's just I don't have any way to prove it.
exactly. And so I have Indiana at four, and then five for me. I'm going to put. Mm, I've been debating this all day. If you can't tell, I'm going to put SMU. I'm going to put SMU.
Ben's looking for all the comments in the DMs this week.
This is the thing,
Like
though.
it's
But no, this is the thing, though, Josh. We've talked about this all year long. Outside of the top three, you could put any team in the top five.
Yeah,
From four down. You
there's
can't
not
tell
that much
me.
of a
You
gap.
can't
There's
tell.
not much of
No.
a gap.
So you can't tell me that you can't see it. Like right now, SMU's on a roll. The way they're playing, they're on a roll. They're beating people. It does not matter really who's facing them. The same with Indiana. It doesn't matter how it looks. They're still beating people. So for
Hmm.
me, I look at teams. I'm not going to put Georgia there. I'm not moving Alabama all the way up from. For me, they were like at 15. I'm not moving them all the way up. Tennessee, they could go there. They
They got the
could
win
go
over
there.
Alabama, but they got the loss to Arkansas.
Exactly. So my point is this: is that any team outside of Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas could go in the 4 and 5 slot. So for me, why not take a shot and see what happens? And again, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe these two teams are not even close to where they need to be there. But it's very hard for anyone to convince me that there's any other team that's better because all these teams have been knocking each other off.
You know, another hard conversation, Ben. Texas, their best win's Vanderbilt.
Exactly.
Their
I,
second best win might be Florida
no,
or
I
Michigan.
100% agree. That's what I'm saying is that I don't. And again, I've watched Penn State, and I don't think Penn State's better than SMU or really Indiana right now. So I I just can't figure that. And then again, also Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. So for me, I'm just kind of in the weird spot of that. So there you
Notre
go.
Dame should be in this discussion, but yeah, there's just
I'm sorry, I
they
can't.
it's
lost
just
to
been a
freaking Northern
weird
Illinois
year.
though, and then they got wins over Louisville, which are okay. They got a win over Navy, which is nice until they lost to Rice, and now Navy's not looking like all that tough anymore. So yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, I'm probably I don't have as many hot takes as you do in my top five, but I mean all the arguments for all these teams like Oregon is my one and Ohio State is my two. I think those are like the undisputed 1, 2 for everybody in the country. And then from there it's like I guess Texas. I hate that they lost by 2 scores to Georgia on their home field while Carson Beck threw 3 picks and no touchdowns. It's like that's the best team you played all year and that's how you perform, but honestly, show me who should be there. I don't have a better argument. Penn State, I am going to put it four. I I know, like I said, they don't have like that signature win. I listed all their best wins. They played Ohio State
Josh,
tough. I know their defense is legit. It's going to be able to help them compete with anybody. And then that fifth team is just like,
Indiana,
again, I don't know. I'm not going to put Indiana though.
SMU.
I
Don't
You
don't
do
can't
see
tell me. You
that.
can't tell me.
Tennessee.
That makes
You
Look,
just went off of how they lost to Arkansas, dude.
yeah, they lost to Arkansas. That's why they're only fifth. They should be higher than this. Like Tennessee at their peak should be like 4 or 3. Like they shouldn't be only five. And you probably could make the argument, like a lot of people could, that they probably should be 9 or 8 too. But yeah, I'll read it again. Like through Tennessee's schedule, like yeah, they got the win over Alabama, and then the next best wins, honestly, are I mean that NC State win that they got doesn't look all that great anymore either. That they got in week 2. The win at Oklahoma doesn't look all that great either. Uh, Florida, they had to go to overtime to beat them. They beat Kentucky by 10. So yeah, I know Tennessee doesn't look all that tough, at least from the resume standpoint. But again, it's like all these other teams. It's like what we're looking through their resumes, and it's like arguing whether you'd rather drink freaking sheep pee or cow pee or horse pee. Honestly, like it all's pee and it
Go
sucks.
with Cal.
I
It's
don't want
supposed
any of it. So yeah, Tennessee's my five, and watch they'll go and lose to Georgia this weekend, and then I'll be proven
Josh is the
It
wrong.
cursor.
will.
But
I
yeah,
have Georgia.
I
Georgia's
do curse a
beating.
lot of teams, so that's my five. Bryce,
My
let's hear
five
yours.
is Oregon's at one. Not much to discuss there. They're just electric. Uh, um, Dylan Gabriel is top three Heisman candidate. Um, yeah, number one, beat Ohio State. Haven't really shown any weaknesses yet. Number two, Ohio State. I actually think on paper and looking at potential and talent and just the overall roster and gifted ability, I think Ohio State is, if they were playing to their potential, which I'm sure you'd maybe agree, I think are the number one team. But they haven't been playing quite like it just yet. I think they're starting to defensively, obviously. I just hope that we can have discipline in the backfield and Ryan Day makes some good play calls. Well, I guess he's not really play calling so
No,
much on
Chip
offense
Kelly's
anymore.
calling it.
Chip Kelly is, which is I think coming to fruition now. I think we're seeing
Yes.
it, and I think we will these last couple of weeks. So Ohio State's not my number one yet, although they will be by the end. Also I have Ohio State too, and it gets kind of hard there. I mean, after this, Texas is three. I think those are the three best teams in college football, and one of those three teams are going to win the championship. Um, Four, Penn State. They competed with Ohio State. Defense looks phenomenal. I think they'll be hanging around for the playoff. And then my five, I'm happy that Penn's pick was so crazy, so mine doesn't sound as crazy. But and I know I don't know, it's a few podcasts ago. I mean, it would have been a year or two ago when I was on, but I had these guys in my top five, and none of y'all did, and I think they ended up winning the Natty. I can't remember, but I still have Alabama in my five, and the reason I do is again, I'm not necessarily looking at the win loss record, even though that's
Josh's
basically what
face.
you're supposed to look at. I'm looking at like if this team
Hmm.
were to match up against this team this
Well, I
weekend.
think that's like what a power ranking is.
Well,
Like you don't
Yeah,
necessarily have to weigh in merit or like
but
resume.
also
It's just
like let's be honest, if Alabama and SMU
just
play
just
together,
remember
Alabama is going to win.
they have the quarterback that chokes in big games. Just reminder. Just reminder.
Yeah, but he has the ability to like to
And
beat.
I have ability to be in the NBA, but I can't.
I don't think you do. But
That is
anyways,
true.
Milroe proved that ability this past weekend against LSU, which is a good team, and he's also jumped back up in the Heisman race. Which when we go through that, you'll see him up high up on my Heisman candidates. But
Yeah.
Alabama's still at five. SMU is nowhere, not even at 10.
You know
So
what? Y'all come knocking when they're in the top five. Just let me know. All
Oregon,
right.
Ohio State, Texas, Penn
Yeah,
State.
I would not put Alabama five in like the playoff poll, but like for a power ranking, I mean, I
For
understand
a
the argument.
power for a
Yeah,
power.
right.
All right. So we
Heisman's.
yes, Heisman list. So my Heisman list from last week was Ashton Jeanty one, Travis Hunter two, Dylan Gabriel three, four Cam Ward, five Shador Sanders. Josh's was one Travis Hunter, two Ashton Jeanty, three Cam Ward, four Dylan Gabriel, five Shador Sanders. Um, for mine, I'll just do this week. We can just kind of all do it at one, do our whole list at once. For me, I'm gonna go 5-1 just for the fun. For
All right.
me, five is Cam Ward. Again, even though they did lose, the guy's just really fun to watch. I mean, he does make mistakes here and there, but it's kind of like Will Howard in a sense at Ohio State, where sometimes he does a little bit more than he should, but at the end of the day, he's gonna try to put you in a good place to win. So Cam Ward is at number five for me. Four is Shador Sanders. Again, he's playing really well, and he's on a really a good team right now. And so that's where I have him there. Number three is Dylan Gabriel. He's going to stay where he's at. I think Dylan Gabriel is for me. He's not having great numbers, and that's why, like, if you actually look at his numbers, he's the exact same numbers as Will Howard. Fun
They are
fact.
pretty close.
So, Will Howard is getting very close to entering my list again. We'll see what happens in the next, week or so. But then number two, I'm going to drop Ashton Janty. Just not like he's doing anything wrong. I mean, he's still running for 200 freaking yards. But for me, I've stuck with him for so long. But Travis Hunter, as the longer the year gets on, it seems like the stronger he gets. And so for me, Travis Hunter will be number one.
All right, for mine now. Last week I had Travis Hunter 1, Ashton Jeanty 2, Cam Ward 3, Dylan Gabriel 4, and Shedeur 5. And those guys, I think I'm going to stick with those five guys in that same order, and I'll explain why. So Travis Hunter 1, I'm with you, Ben. Like Ashton Jeanty, like is still having a great season at running back, but it seems like as the year goes on, uh, they play uh, some tougher teams. Like the pace is just slowing down. Like we were expecting that Barry Sanders pace, and I'm not sure like where exactly he stands on that right now, but it's not exactly like he's averaging
He's
12
about
yards a
seven. He's
carry
about
anymore
700
with
yards short. He's about 700 yards short.
okay. So it's still within reach if he, has one of those like freaky games that he had like early in the year. But to the Travis Hunter appeal to me has just been like not like Charles Woodson playing both sides of the ball where he comes in for like a jet sweep or like returns punts. Like Travis Hunter's playing full-time offense and defense and very good at both. We don't see people like that. So then, yeah, him and Ashton Jeanty, but you could flip them and I wouldn't fight you
Yeah.
too hard on it. Cam Ward is staying at 3 for me. Even with the loss, still leads the country in passing yards, passing touchdowns, and QB rating. You got to have a place somewhere on this list if you're like balling out like that. And Dylan Gabriel at 4 for me, like I thought about dropping him out, but I'm pretty sure he's going to probably be on the finalist list just simply because he's the quarterback on the number one team in the country and is still like a key contributor to the success that Oregon has been having. And then 5, I am leaving Shedeur here as well. I thought about seeing our comments. Chris Drew was saying Jackson Dart needs some consideration, but honestly, still outside the Arkansas game against SEC competition, he's throwing like just one touchdown or no touchdown, finishing sub 200 yards. Like what he did in those first 3 games against like FCS and G5 teams, I don't really care about. I want to see what he's doing against like
Yeah.
the main teams, like the meat of the schedule, and he's not doing it. But Shedeur is, as evidenced last week with Texas Tech and all throughout the conference schedule for them. So those are my 5.
All right, I guess sum up. I'm gonna sound like Ben trying to talk about UFC when I give mine. I'm
All
not I'm
right.
not a huge college football aficionado. I'm more of an NFL guy, but I did look at a couple articles, look at a couple stats, threw one together for you guys. Number one, I have Ashton Jeanty. Am I pronouncing that correct? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. You are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what he's doing is just really special. I mean, and like you alluded to earlier, you could swap between Travis Hunter and them. I have Hunter at 2. I think you could go either way. Just looking at what's being done by both of those gentlemen. Number 3, I got Dylan Gabriel. I think he's a huge part of the success in Oregon. Number 4, I put Jalen Milroe, and I hit Alabama. But I know I sound like a fanboy putting them at 5 and having them go up there. But I'm looking at this from the perspective of kind of like how the NFL picks a MVP candidate. They're bringing the most value to their team. They're winning because of that specific player, and I think Alabama is winning in the way they did at least last week because of Milroe. I don't think without him, I don't think they would be as great. So, and then number 5, you guys might laugh at me for this one, but for that with that same criteria in mind, I picked Jackson Dart with Ole Miss.
There you go.
I don't
Love
think
it.
Ole Miss is winning anything much without what success he's bringing, even if it doesn't look pretty. But Ole Miss is still they're playing well, and I think it's because of Dart, and I think it's worthy of a top 5 consideration for the Heisman.
Love
Leaving
it.
Cam Ward off the list. Unreal.
He's at 6, if there's a 6.
If there's a 6th one, all right. Well, hey, that basically recaps the whole last week then and where we stand as far as going into this week. So I'll go ahead and bring up the 5 games that I said we'll be talking about today. So we'll just work our way down from the noon slate to the evening and kicking it off with Texas at Arkansas. So again, this is another team that's not really going to do a whole lot, I think, for Texas's resume. Arkansas has obviously had their moments being able to beat Tennessee, my number 5 team, but Texas has also had some close calls too. Uh, Not against Florida, but Vanderbilt they only got by 3. And then yeah, had that loss at home to Georgia. So they are one of the best teams in the country, but they do have their moments and uh, right now are a 13.5 point favorite over Arkansas. Uh, that Arkansas defense obviously got shellacked by Ole Miss, and I'm sure Quinn Ewers could do some damage to them, just like he did against Florida. So uh, I'll turn it over to Ben to give us his thoughts and a score prediction if he wants to give one.
Oh, yeah. I've been thinking about this one. No, it's very. You know what? We should let Brice give the first. I think we should do. I think we should be nice and let Brice have the first one.
Let Bryce
He's
go
got to
with the
think
first
about it
game.
for a while.
Because no, because I think I always, I think like guests, we haven't had a guest in a while. We're a little dusty at this. We're a little rusty. So I
Dusty,
say,
we do it every week.
no, I mean like having a guest on, we want to make
Oh,
sure that,
I gotcha.
that sort of thing. So Brice, why don't you give us a score prediction here and what your thoughts are? And then we'll both do it. I'll let Josh go and then me.
All right. Well, speaking of guests, so last time I was on, which was quite a while ago, I believe I overtook the record for most guest appearances for I
Yeah,
think
that
it
is
was
true actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
do I
you
still
are
hold
now.
that title? Do I still
Yes, you
hold that?
do.
you do.
Okay.
We
Yes.
haven't. I don't
So
think
am
we've
I
We
up
had.
have
by
no one else thoughts.
so I'm up by 2 now?
You're up by
Oh,
2 now. Yes, my brother is
Yeah, you're
still.
probably up by
Yeah,
a couple.
yeah.
All right. Yeah. My prediction is I'm not going to go really into analysis with this game. I just think it's a given for Texas to win 37-21. Texas.
Yeah, I'm not going to think too hard on this one either. I'm actually going to give Texas 48 and Arkansas 21. It just seems like when Arkansas, with the exception of Tennessee, when they do get into these games, like LSU ended up being a shellacking, Ole Miss ended up being a shellacking. Like they really don't have any business being in games like this. So I'm going to go ahead and
Mhm.
give Texas the respect that their offense deserves and go with the big win on the road for Texas.
Yeah, I'm going to go Texas here. I'm going to go Texas. I'm going to go 45, Arkansas 24. I think it's going to be a decent, maybe at the beginning it's a little sluggish, but I think by the end, Texas's talent is going to take over. And I think you're going to see that Texas that we all expect to see every single time out there.
All right. And if that does end up being a landslide win for Texas, also at noon, you can flip over to Clemson at Pitt.
Ooh.
Both of these teams are at the top in the top 25 at the moment, both with 7-2 records, but obviously both are trying to salvage their seasons because Pitt was undefeated for a while before losing 48-25 to SMU. And this past game they played, they lost 24-19 on their home field to Virginia. On the other side, Clemson obviously had that week 1 loss to Georgia, went on a nice win streak, and then just laid an egg at home against Louisville, lost a game they had no business losing 33-21, and then just got back on their feet with a 24-14 win over Virginia Tech on the road last weekend. So, like I said, Clemson at the moment does hold, I think, second in the ACC. So that if they win out, they should be okay to still play in that ACC championship game and get obviously a chance at one of those top 4 seeds in the playoff. But yeah, that's basically, I guess, the scenario right now. Clemson's favored by 10 in this one. You want Bryce to go first again, Ben?
No,
Do I
I'll
go
go.
first?
No,
Oh,
you
okay.
go.
He's
No,
feeling a little more
Bryce.
confident in this one, Bryce.
Okay. Yeah, I
I,
guess. I thought the guest was going to go first, but if you want to go, that's fine.
no, Bryce, go. Please, Bryce.
No,
Let
I'm
us
taking.
South no South Carolina. Please let us know. Being a
Yeah.
South Carolina guy.
Well, I'm hoping that this game that Clemson's going to win is going to build up even more excitement for when they play the Gamecocks at the end of the year. I can't wait to see a ranked Gamecocks and a ranked Clemson. I think Clemson turns it on, gets back in the gears, gets excited for the end of the year. I think Pitt shouldn't even be there, never should have been. Clemson wins 44-27.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength. I think that I mean Pitt obviously had to be ranked in the AP because they're an undefeated P5 team, but the lack of competition on their schedule is really showing. I think these last couple weeks with the games that they've played, and I would hope that Clemson is still motivated with still reasons to play. Uh, and then obviously, yeah, that game against South Carolina should be an absolute banger too. So
Mhm.
I'm going with Clemson in this one, and I think that they can cover that 10, maybe to the tune of 33-18.
Yeah, I really think Clemson is starting to figure it out, and I think Clemson's going to win this one. Ooh. I'm going to go 38-20 Clemson. So by 18, I think Clemson's going to have a good win here.
All right. Moving on now to Bryce's home state. Missouri is playing at South Carolina at 4:15. And Missouri is the ranked team at the moment, but South Carolina is a 12-point favorite, and there's a lot of good reasons for that. They're coming off that really nice win over Texas A&M, uh, then defeated Vanderbilt, another team that's been ranked at one point in the conference and has had some nice wins. So yeah, it's awesome seeing South Carolina have a fully healthy Lenore Sellers and Rocket Sanders. I feel like they're finally hitting like all the potential that they came into the season with. They've had their moments where they got screwed in that LSU game and
Yeah.
would have liked to have seen a better turnout against Ole Miss, and they almost were able to take down Bama. But yeah, South Carolina, Brice can probably speak more to this, is really hitting their peak. And Mizzou, kind of like Pitt, it's just one of those teams where it's like their record isn't they are not what their record says they are, is how I should word it, because every time they play anybody good, like Texas A&M, 41-10 loss, Alabama 34-0 loss. And I don't know if South Carolina can beat them quite that badly, but I don't think it's going to be close.
Yeah, other than that Ole Miss loss, Gamecocks are looking like a really good football team for once, and it's so nice. I mean, obviously, my first love is Ohio State, but being down here and having all my friends be Gamecocks fans, I work not even a mile from the stadium, and just the atmosphere from it. And I even we with my company we help service the maintenance crews for the stadium and everything. Just the energy is so different that I haven't even experienced in my seven-ish, almost 8 years now living here. They have a good football team. They haven't had a good football team, like they have now. And this one has been circled on the calendar for a couple weeks now because Missouri, I believe, kind of. I don't know. It's always a one where Missouri seems to punch Carolina in the mouth. This is one that I think Carolina truly proves that they are that good football team. I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I do think Gamecocks win 31-28. Missouri loses their ranking. Gamecocks go up a couple more spots, go on to smack Wofford next week after, and then Clemson for a big game.
Yeah. Ben.
Ooh, yeah. I think, yeah, Josh, I have not been high on Missouri at all this year, and I have not seen them click enough to really think that they're going to do something here and make really a run at the end of the year. And so for me, I think the momentum, and we always talk about momentum in football. As I'm coaching, I tell my players this: momentum in football is something that is very hard to stop. And for me, I think that's what South Carolina is on. And I think they get a
Mhm.
very decisive victory. And I think it's going to be 34-17 South Carolina.
Mm. I know it was a bowl game and a lot of guys set out, and you obviously didn't have Caleb Downs or Quinshon Judkins or Will Howard over yet, but isn't it kind of like annoying that Ohio State struggled so much in that bowl game with Missouri
Yeah, but,
Yeah,
yes, but
last year?
but honestly though, I look at it though, and I really do look at those, like all the people that were out, and like Ohio State
yeah,
was so demoralized from what happened in the season that I think there was no way that we were winning that game, and I believe that even before we played. So for me, it's just it is what it is. But again, I think this year, if you face the Ohio State team this year versus Missouri, it wouldn't even be close. So Those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Moving to the Big Ten, we've got Oregon at Wisconsin at 7:30. So fun game at Camp Randall Stadium setup right there. Oregon, I'll go over their resume real quick. Obviously, they got the win over Ohio State, best win in the country. And then they got a win over Boise State, which we weren't sure how like much weight that was going to hold, but obviously Boise State's a really good team, and Ashton Jeanty's a Heisman finalist or will be. They got a win over Illinois when they were in the top 20 at the time. And Wisconsin, I mean, they are what they are. They're like a middle of the pack Big Ten team this year, so it's going to be like I think a game that Oregon can't exactly glance over, but the bottom line is Oregon's just been beating everybody as they should that's been in front of them. They've since that Ohio State game, they beat Purdue 35 to nothing. They beat Illinois 38 to 9, Michigan 38 to 17, and then last week Maryland 39 to 18. Um, so I would expect again Oregon not to struggle too much in this one. Dylan Gabriel will continue to add on to his totals as the FBS leader in touchdown passes for a career. And I think Oregon will probably come out and win pretty similar margin to what they have been winning. I'll go with a 37 to 17 win for the Ducks.
Ooh.
I'm going Oregon 48-24. What points Wisconsin scores is just going to be garbage points in the second half. That's all I really got to say about that one.
Yeah, I think Oregon's just on a roll, but Wisconsin's trash. So, they're not very good offensively. They're very much like a Michigan, just with red and white. So, for me, I'm gonna go Oregon 52, Wisconsin 21.
All right. And then also happening at 7:30 that night is Tennessee at Georgia. So
Oh, this is
Georgia,
gonna be a fun prediction for me. Oh, this is gonna be fun.
it is a fun one, and I've gone a couple different ways on this one. Georgia, I'll just say is a 10-point home favorite, which is crazy against Tennessee. Like I don't think that there's that many points
No, there's
separating
not.
these teams, but it also would make a lot of freaking sense the way that the SEC has gone this year for Tennessee to just lay an egg in this one, wouldn't
Mhm.
it?
Yeah. No, true.
And like take down another team in the SEC and make them with two losses. Like the way that the season could end in the SEC, there's a lot of potential that there will not be any one-loss teams. There might not even be that many two-loss teams if
Yeah.
enough like that'd be more like if enough crazy things happen. But Texas could be the only one-loss team, and they still got to play Texas A&M at the end of the year too. But I know everything that I just said about Tennessee, like putting them at 5 right now, that this is gonna maybe contradict some things. But since Georgia just lost to Ole Miss, and Tennessee has obviously that capability to lose to teams like Arkansas, like I'm kind of leaning Georgia here on maybe like a game-winning field goal, which is I
Oh,
hate saying that, but
You
I
know,
also I kind of have a hard time also just with the way that they've been playing football lately the last few years to see Georgia with 3 losses.
yeah, I'm with you. I think that egg gets laid. I actually have my score. Well, I don't know if you gave your score, so I don't want to interrupt. But
I
he
went
doesn't
ahead
give
and said by a
scores. That's
field
Josh's
goal.
thing. That's
I
Josh's
don't
thing.
like giving scores. I like
It's
giving
very
margins.
stupid. It's very
I think
stupid.
okay,
It's very
I think
stupid.
Georgia by a field goal. I'll give you a score of 37 to
Thank you.
34, Ben.
Thank you,
okay,
Josh. What normal people do. Thank you.
very very close to mine. Actually, I have Georgia winning by a field goal as well. 34-31. I just don't trust Tennessee in this caliber of a game against Georgia. Obviously, Georgia kind of sucks at scoring, but still, when you look at their scores at the end of the day, they're still mid 30s, sometimes 40s, I think.
Yeah. And that defense can get points too, because
Even
like
though
I
when you're
said,
watching, even though when you're watching them play, it feels like they've only scored 14 points, but somehow by the end of the game, they have somehow won,
yeah,
with
it's all the
exception.
other facets of the game. Like I said, Carson Beck didn't even throw a touchdown against Texas, but they scored 30 points
Yeah.
as a team.
I still think they're elite defensively, even though they haven't been the Georgia defense that we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
But and I just Tennessee to me is yeah, they're like the Gamecocks. They're a good football team, but I don't think they're beating the top.
The one way that I could see Tennessee getting an edge here, and I was looking at this beforehand. So Tennessee's rush defense, pass defense, and third down defense actually all rank higher than what Georgia's does right now. like just
Mm,
rush yards per attempt allowed, pass yards per attempt allowed, and third down conversion percentage allowed. Like Tennessee's defense actually does beat Georgia in all of those, but I think Georgia's. I mean, they've got both teams have gone up against Alabama, but Georgia's also gone up against Ole Miss. They've gone up against Texas. I think they've been a little more battle tested, so that
yeah.
could skew those stats a little bit.
Tennessee's games are all just too close too, even against unranked teams.
Yeah.
I think it's be close, fun game, be worth watching for any fan of football. Georgia wins by a field goal in the fourth quarter after it's tied 31-31, game winning 34-31 Georgia.
I'm gonna go. I, it's hard. I agree with you guys. It's hard, but I'm gonna say that Georgia loses for their third game after just not losing for it seems like a century. But
Yeah.
I just this offense is so bad, Josh. It's so bad to watch, and at least with Tennessee, even when they're a little off, they seem to kind of get it going. But it seems like when Georgia's offense can't do anything, they literally can't do anything. And so for me, I'm just going to say that I just don't think Georgia has what it takes, and I'm going to say Tennessee kind of goes in there and does job, and I'm going to say Tennessee wins 19-14.
Ooh, defensive game.
Ooh,
Like it.
oh,
All right. Yeah, it's just like one of those things where it's like I look through everything and it's like Tennessee should win this game, but there's just like that mental barrier in my head of what the Georgia
yeah.
Bulldogs football program is that
Yeah.
just can't. Like there's other teams that I do that with too, like with Ohio State and Penn State. Like everything on paper before that game indicated that Penn State should win this game, but I know how the matchup goes. I know how
Yeah,
James Franklin is against Ohio State, and I know how
mid
Drew Aller
James.
is against teams like this. So I was just like, I'm going to Ohio State, and it ended up being right. And hopefully I'm right in this one too. But if not, my power ranking will look a little better with Tennessee getting a win in this game.
That's true.
There you go. There you
Or
go.
terrible. Or terrible. It's a
Yeah.
Yeah,
high risk, high reward.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that ought to do it then with
Yeah.
everything that I had on the agenda today.
Yeah. Well, I will say, thank you, Brice, for popping on and talking some UFC, talking some football. We appreciate your knowledge, and it makes up for my lack of knowledge. So we appreciate it, Brice. We always love having you on.
Yeah, man, it's a fun time. I'll try not to make it such a long wait before the next one, but I hope everybody tunes into some UFC this weekend. Jon Jones, one of the most entertaining, greatest fighters of all time, not just in UFC, but MMA in general. Don't miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah, flip right over there right after the Georgia
Oh
Tennessee
wait,
game.
yeah, Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are fighting this weekend too.
No one cares. No one cares.
Any predictions there?
That's Friday, right?
Yeah.
Knockout Mike Tyson. No.
Not even
It's
real
listen.
rules.
It's gonna
It's
be.
rigged. Just Mike Tyson. I'm just gonna say it because I don't think he's gonna let his legacy be tarnished. But
Yeah, it's true. It's going to be a great overall weekend for sports. And if you love watching on YouTube, go ahead and click that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Let us know, hey, you love watching. Give us some ideas. Give us some ideas for people to have on. What we should talk about with Brice next time he's on. All that fun stuff down below. If you love listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, then please go ahead and favorite it, share with your friends and family, and as always, enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy listening to us, whether you're in the car, whether you're at home. But yeah, go watch some football. Go watch some UFC. Have fun and be safe. And until next time, we'll see ya.